You're listening to Innovation for Alpha, where we explore everything at the intersection of healthcare innovation and finance. Through our discussions and interviews, we keep you informed and educated about healthcare innovations, next-level venture investing, and everything involving the combination of the two.
Hi, everybody. It's Tobin Arthur with another episode of Innovation for Alpha. And today we have a really exciting episode and show for you. Maraia Tanner, who is the CEO of Star Harbor, is joining us. And this is an unusual topic for us because we're going to be talking about space and this incredible organization she is building. So Maraia, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. Happy to be here. Oops, my my dogs just started.
That's fantastic. My dogs are usually the ones in the background. Well, there's so many different neat angles here because you guys are building this in Colorado, and not just in Colorado, but actually in Lone Tree, which is where I am. So it's really close to home, literally. But it's such a fascinating topic. But I want to walk back just a little bit. Let's talk about you and your background. How did you get into space? And then we'll get into how Star Harbor became a thing.
Okay. Well, how I got into space, I really can't say because I can't remember a time ever in my life where I wasn't fascinated by space. Most kids, they want to be a doctor, a lawyer, an astronaut, whatever. There was only one thing I ever wanted to be growing up, and that was an astronaut. And so, went to space camp, went to Space Academy, in Huntsville, had a phenomenal time. Those were my people. And I really stayed on that track until high school. I would say I had a little bit of a left turn for a little while because, when you're a kid and you want to say, or you say you want to be an astronaut, people are like, that's great, go for it. You get to about 13, 14, 15, and they're like, oh, cool. What's your backup plan? And so I actually went to university at Berkeley, out of high school, studied political economy of industrial societies, and was a semester away from graduation. Called up my mom and was like, I don't know what I'm going to do with this. I don't like these classes, I'm struggling and what I'm doing here. She said, Maraia, what are you doing? Like, space is your thing, like you should be doing that. So at the time, Berkeley had a policy that you had to get your undergraduate in 120 units, or they'd, let you go with a liberal arts degree. And I figured if I was going to go the, NASA astronaut route, I needed to have a science degree. So broke open the course catalog, and there was one science major that fit within the units I had remaining, and that was physics. And I had never taken a physics class, didn't even really know what it was, and decided I was going to be a physics major. Lucky for me, or as fate would have it, I absolutely fell in love with physics. I was good at it. I ended up moving home to Orange County and finished my degree in UC Irvine. So I didn't have to work anymore to put myself through school. And then interned with TRW.
Oh, wow.
At the time, during my summer between my junior and senior year. And then I got hired back in as a systems engineer after I graduated. I did satellite design, mostly communication satellites, some space telescopes, some really great JPL NASA Mars missions, a little bit of defense work. But I was never really on board with getting my security clearances, just because I didn't want to be in all that.
Yeah.
So very peripheral kind of work. But really loved engineering. Loved the projects I was working on. And then had babies. And had some at-home businesses for a little while they were young. Taught high school physics and math for a year while they were little. And then when they were old enough and both in school, I decided, to get back into the career field. And I had been working with Zero G, if you're familiar with that corporation.
Yeah.
Yeah, great company. Loved my time with them. I was part of the flight crew in the first flight attendant class. Believe it or not, all the crew had to get flight attendant certified, which is and I flew with them on and off for 9 years.
Wow.
And yeah, hundreds of parabolas under my belt. One of the best times you'll ever have.
That's cool.
And it was really there that we started to get the idea for Star Harbor, because nobody was really taking on the training. We would ask folks when they were coming through, folks that were working with some of the space flight companies, what are your plans for training? And there was sort of a unanimous, oh, we'll worry about it later. And so nobody was really handling it. So we put together a really phenomenal team, and Star Harbor was born.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so the types of, like, the training for, talks about the organizations that would need the recipients of this training. So, who would that include?
So, the obvious customers are like the crew for any of the commercial space flight vehicles or the commercial space stations that are being developed. Any of their passengers or researchers that would be present. Obviously, the commercial tourism market, right? And so we're targeting, and maybe surprising, but we expect about 20% of our business revenues are actually going to be coming from space flight training.
Okay.
And that will cover all the passenger, crew, and peripheral education required for people to be safe and efficient on their missions. But what's also exciting is that all of the equipment within Star Harbor, the high gravity centrifuge, we have a hyperbaric chamber for high altitude, low pressure, low oxygen environments, hyperbaric chamber for pool safety primarily, but some research as well. A neutral buoyancy tank, aka very, very, very large pool. And we will have our own 767 for microgravity flight.
Wow.
But all of these environments, not only are they necessary for spaceflight training, they are also very critical and hard to access space analog environments that are necessary for vetting new products and technologies on the ground before paying for them to go on orbit. You want to find out that latch isn't going to deploy while it's still on Earth, rather than when it's in space. And so all the big companies have their own testing environments, but the startups and some of the university research groups and small aerospace organizations don't have access to those space analog environments. And so the bulk of our business is actually going to be providing those environments for R&D to help move the industry forward faster.
That's really neat. So this is not a typical startup. It's a there's a lot of scale here. Walk through a little bit of that. So you're in California at the time. You're envisioning this new entity. Talk a little, maybe just some of the high level things, and then ultimately how you guys determined to plunk it down in Lone Tree, Colorado.
Sure. We had first found a location down in Southern California, in San Diego. We loved the location. It's got a really fantastic innovation culture there, and we thought it would be a good fit. And then we got really challenged with some of the building dynamics in California. We were told that it would take 10 to 12 years to get through CEQA, which is the California Environmental Quality Assurance Act, which unfortunately has very little to do with environmental quality assurance these days. It really seems to be more of a way for developers to get in each other's way. And so And to be clear, like, I'm the biggest tree hugger in town. Most of, I would say 90% of, what Star Harbor is about is creating a sustainable future. I'm very much an environmentalist and believe that, we can leverage space to make a difference here on Earth. And we were planning on building out and meet or exceed the environmental standards in California, which are, some of the most stringent in the nation. But it didn't matter. So we were looking at 10 to 12 years for CEQA, 1 to 2 years to get through the Coastal Commission because it was on the coast, and then 1 to 2 years to get through planning, and then we'd be able to put a shovel in the ground. So we looked at a few other places. We worked on Northern California for a while, had been working with the California Governor's Office to place the campus near Moffett Field. And I won't go into all that drama, but suffice to say, it didn't work out. That's another story.
Fair enough. Sure.
So we looked at Texas, Florida, Puerto Rico, believe it or not, and then Colorado. And we visited all of these places, and of course my team had very strong opinions on where they wanted the campus to be and where they were willing to live. I really didn't know anything about the Colorado aerospace ecosystem, despite having been in aerospace my entire adult life. But when we got here and realized that, it's the largest aerospace employer per capita in the country, huge number of the new and upcoming aerospace startups are centered here in Denver. And there's this really unique, I would say, collaborative spirit here. There's the Colorado Space Coalition and other groups that really work to bring, these aerospace companies together so that they can, work holistically to, make, our collective vision come true. And I just didn't see any of that in any of the other places that we were looking. And in Colorado, the economic development organizations and whatnot were super enthusiastic about Star Harbor. Unfortunately, because we fall into gray areas, it's like we're a startup, but like a really big one.
Right.
So we didn't fit into, like any of the nice, neat boxes for
not 3 people in a garage anymore.
No. And even though, it's like, we technically qualify, for some programs because we have, less than 20 employees and our revenues are small and all of that. We, it's still like a $700 million project. So, right. Like the $50,000, grants that they have for the startups, don't really go a long way to moving that ball forward. But there was huge support. We looked at a few different locations. We looked out near the airport, Den Airport. We had previously looked at Colorado Springs, and because we wanted to be near one of the big airports because of our 767 operation. But because we're doing this in collaboration and partnership with real estate developers, there were a lot of practical, land value considerations and whatnot that we had to be thinking about. And so when this parcel, we became aware of this parcel in Lone Tree, we got really excited. It's a little bit of a trek to one of the airports, but the location is spectacular. The mayor and the city are fantastic. They're super excited about Star Harbor. The county has been incredible. We've really been welcomed with open arms and are loving where we are going to be locating.
That's cool. And I'm curious too. I mean, as you've learned about the Colorado ecosystem, was that partly driven by the fact that the Air Force Academy and NORAD were here, or what was the impetus for this becoming aeronautical space oriented state?
Yeah, I think that's driven a lot of it because all the companies that do support DoD and the Air Force and whatnot, they all have a presence out here to some extent. And I think that probably was the foundation. But then I think Colorado has been really aggressive in welcoming, startups and new companies to come out to Colorado. And I would say it's working.
That's cool. Well, so give us a sense of, as you mentioned, I mean, it's not your typical startup. There's a lot of people involved. It's a big endeavor. Where are you now in terms of the process?
Yep.
What's next? What's the next year look like for you? Give us a sense of some of that.
Sure. So we signed a purchase sale agreement for about 53 acres in Lone Tree, Colorado, which is just about 20 minutes south of Denver, in October. And we've started going through the preliminary design engineering phase for the academy, getting ready to go to real architecture soon. And we have selected a finance partner that'll be bringing the vast majority of the campus funding. Very, very happy about that. That's been a long time coming. And then right now, we're in the process of selecting a master developer. And there's 2, maybe 3 organizations that I would say are in the running right now. And they both bring very different capabilities and resources to the table. So, it's going to be a interesting process, sort of down selecting, but, and then, we're in a raise right now for the operating capital. But it looks like, we've got the finance figured out for, basically the rest of the campus. So we're really happy about that. I expect we'll probably be in the design and engineering phase for the next year about, and then I expect that we will complete the sale of the property and put a shovel on the ground.
It's amazing. What, in terms of the capital needs, I mean, this is obviously at a scale that's not, $50,000 startup fees that a lot of little startups would take. So give us is this all private investors? Is it a mix of backers? How have you managed that?
Yeah, so it'll be a mix. We expect some private investment on the academy operating business.
Okay.
But a large portion of the campus will be financed with tax-exempt bond financing.
Yep.
And which creates a lot of really fantastic opportunities because that becomes a cash flow stream for our education nonprofit, which we're planning to do a lot of really great work getting kids excited about STEAM and inspiring them to pursue a career in one of the STEAM fields or space.
Yep.
And working with some really fantastic organizations on that front. A lot that you would know. I'm not sure if we're disclosing who they are yet, but names you would recognize. And then, so there's the tax-exempt bond financing, and then also the developer that we select will be bringing some capital to the table.
Okay. And give us a sense, roughly, is it going to get built out in increments to where certain parts will be operational before other parts? What does that kind of look like? And then when do you expect that first sort of like, opening of the door of the first, whatever, component that is?
Yeah. We had expected to be building the campus out in 3 phases. The initial phase was going to be the academy and the hotel, the crew quarters hotel, which would house the students for short or midterm stays, I would say. And then the rest of the campus would follow on, and there's office space, that would have mixed use retail, classrooms, gift space, because we're working with a lot of really interesting DoD organizations. We have a CRADA with the U.S. Air Force Academy, and conversations happening with Space Force, and a bunch of really exciting stuff in that arena. And some of the DoD innovation organizations have expressed interest in being able to interface with the startups that are going to be attracted to the Star Harbor campus because of these space analog environments, right?
Right.
Workforce development has actually become a huge part of our conversations with, especially the big aerospace companies. They're all struggling for workers right now. They need fabricators and assemblers and machinists and all of that. And these are non-degreed positions. And so we're working with Rankin Technical Colleges, who is a really fantastic workforce development college based in the South, to come out and create a workforce development curriculum that is specific to the industry. And that's got a lot of enthusiasm from our partners and the companies that we're working with. And then some multifamily housing, some workforce housing. A lot of that will be centered on the folks that are working on the campus. And then esports, we signed an LOI with an organization called Glitch, GLYTCH. They're building multiple esports facilities around the country, got a really neat vision. And so we're planning on having all of our gaming, esports, drone racing, first robotics competitions, space con, you name it, all that fun geekery, will be centered around there.
That's great.
And then also the nonprofit, which will be open to the public, so people can come in and see technology demonstrations, spaceflight mock-ups, and should be pretty cool.
Wow, you guys are going to be the hit of the town for sure.
Yeah. Oh, and to answer your question, we thought we were going to have to be building it out in 3 phases because there's just so much. However, the finance partner that we're working with right now is wanting to just knock it all out.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like
so we're really excited about the possibility of being able to cut the ribbon on a campus as opposed to just the first phase.
That's exciting. And so the team, I assume they don't need to necessarily be relocating just at this point. I mean, I have some relocated and some are kind of waiting until it gets further along, or how do you managing that?
Yeah, I think we'll be trickling in over the next few years.
Yeah.
I moved out to Colorado last July, so it's just been over a year. Survived my first winter. It was we actually really enjoyed it. It was, I don't know, the novelty will probably wear off after a few winters.
Shoveling the driveway.
Yeah, but I loved it. Really enjoying Colorado. And I would say, yeah, over time, a lot of the team will be relocating to Colorado. However, not everybody, a lot of what we can do remotely. And I think that's a trend that's not going to be going away.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's for sure here to stay. And, as you look forward, go out 10 years, what do you envision, work backwards in terms of some of the reasons why you started this? As you said, I mean, there's a practical component in terms of training folks, but what do you hope for the impact of the organization to be, across the board? What are some of the big ideas?
I would say there's primarily 2 big ideas that sort of get me out of bed in the morning, if you one is like a Dr. Cy Proctor likes to say, solving for space solves for Earth, right? You find energy solutions, food production solutions, any of these things that are necessary for life on orbit, they can be utilized here on Earth, often to much greater effect. So as an example, agritech, There's a few companies that we're talking to that have got some really neat technologies for growing food on orbit, right? They're not going to be sending cows to Mars anytime soon.
Right.
so you're going to have to learn how to, grow your own vegetables and food products. And there are places around the country, around the globe right now that, really struggle with food production.
Right.
I did some consulting work for the UAE Space Agency, and one of the conversations we had is that, they're like 90%, 95% of their vegetables are imported because they don't have arable land, right? And so this is a problem because it means that they're entirely dependent on the trade networks, right?
Yep.
Which puts you at risk. You
Yep.
never know what's going to happen. And so they're extremely interested in pursuing this agri-tech solution to be able to grow their own produce in UAE, as an example. So really looking for environmental and sustainable solutions that we can leverage space to really affect change here at home. And in part because it's a practical solution, but also because people are excited about investing in space. They're excited about, the adventure of space. And so there's much more enthusiasm for creating those space solutions than the having to deal with the housekeeping,
Right.
like here on the, because that just feels like a chore for a lot of people. So that's one thing. And then I would say the other thing is, I'm sure you guys are familiar, probably talked about it before, the overview effect. Yeah.
Give it a little sense of how that plays in. Yeah.
So it's a phenomenon that many astronauts experience, not all, but most, as is reported. And it, depending on who you talk to, it affects them differently. But they say, when you're up there and you're looking down at Earth from that perspective, right? And you either see no borders, or like one of our astronauts, Ron Guerin, likes to say, he noticed at night that there was this lit up gash at the top of India, and he realized it was the militarized border between India and Pakistan, right?
Yep.
But when you're up there and you see that you're all floating around on the same rock through space,
yep.
How ridiculous, all of that is. And so, they talk about, from an environmental perspective, that you see that there's this thin blue line that is protecting every living thing on this planet. You see the rainforest disappearing before your eyes, and the sludge running into the rivers, that you're really, it's not like a new political viewpoint. It's rather a cognitive shift that occurs.
Yep.
And you really see yourself, your place in the world in a different way, and so it's really trying to get that experience, that cognitive shift, into as many hands as possible.
Yep.
And frankly, like any new technology, cars, computers, planes, whatever, the first wave is always the affluent, right?
Yeah.
It takes some time before it becomes democratized, and frankly, I'm okay with that. If the first wave of folks that are going and having this experience are the affluent, I'm okay with that, because they're the ones that have the networks, the resources, to actually make a difference when they get home.
That's a good point. Very good point.
Yeah.
So what is your, over the next couple of years, there's lots going on behind the scenes, probably not as much that the public will necessarily see, but how can people stay kind of plugged into progress, A, and B, are there opportunities, are there needs, I guess is the way to put it, that your organization can utilize if people that are listening to this say, oh, that's something I could help with? So maybe kind of two different questions there.
Sure. Well, as far as needs go, I feel like I will be fundraising for the rest of my life.
The nature of something like this, yes.
Yeah, because as soon as we get the Star Harbor campus handled, we're already in conversations with several other locations around the globe that want a Star Harbor campus as well.
Sure.
So I'm expecting that there'll be 3 or 4 more in the not so distant future. And so we'll be fundraising for that.
Yep.
So fundraising is always a need, and I don't see that going away anytime soon. And then as far as team needs, I would say we're always on the lookout for great ideas, and there are especially ideas that can bring industries together. That's always an interest of ours, and actually for your audience, we're working with we have a MOU with CU Boulder and Anschutz Medical. Okay. And there's been a lot of press out recently that they're creating a space medicine program. Yep. Which we're looking to, we expect to be a significant part of. Some of their professors are have been advising us on what our facilities need to look like, and what does our clinic need to look like, and we'll be collecting massive amounts of physiological data while people are in these environments, to the tune of thousands per year, as opposed to a few dozen maybe.
Right. That's
so
pretty exciting.
So I think understanding people who could could use that data to sort of move space medicine forward will always be an interest as well.
That's neat. Well, this is a good stopping point just for the time being. I want to stay plugged in, and we're going to be extremely supportive and fascinated by this, not only because it's in our own backyard, but also as in the broader picture. There's just so many neat things that are going to come out of this.
Absolutely. We're excited.
You can't even sort of put your finger on one. It's just going to touch so many different things. So Maraia, thank you a ton for sharing the impetus for this and the vision for this. We're very excited for you, and
thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
See you again soon for the next episode of Innovation for Alpha. Make sure to go to Innovation for Alpha for access to prior episode links, show notes, and other valuable resources. This show is for entertainment purposes only. Before making any investment decisions, please consult with a professional. This show is copyrighted by Angel Indie Media, and written permission must be granted before syndication or rebroadcasting.